Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to my home. Switch on your cameras, those who can. Yeah, good evening, Sagar. Okay. So people are joining. Let people join. Am I audible clearly? Am I visible? Picture quality okay? Is it like before or some changes are there? I'm actually trying to set the lighting condition. That is why I'm asking you. Seems better. Okay. Shall we start in 2 minutes? Let's start in 2 minutes. Okay. So let's start. Now, so we saw what is personal space language, right? Now, the next type of NVC that we will be dealing with is kinesics. This. Kinesics. Now, what is kinesics? Kinesics is a language that is revealed by our body. In other words, it's known as body language. So, the body language includes many forms of NVCs. It begins with facial expression. So, one of the kinesics is facial expression. Right? One of the kinesics is facial expression. It is defined as the expressions brought on face or expressions brought on face which can convey the emotional state of mind of the individual. So facial expressions include the expressions which are brought on face and which can convey the emotional state of the person. For example, happiness, sadness, fright, delight. These are such expressions which easily show up on face, and one has to make efforts to conceal them. Even those efforts are often quite revealing. So expressions like fear, anger, happiness, delight, sadness, they are difficult to be concealed. And when an individual makes an effort to conceal them, that effort itself reveals the in underlying emotion, right? Now, within the region of face, the most expressive parts are eyes. Within the region of face, the most expressive parts is eyes, are eyes. They are the most expressive ones. And according to Ekman et al., our mouth and eyebrows can convey our mood state. Our mouth and eyebrows can convey our mood state in a big way. Mouth and eyebrows. Okay. So raised eyebrows means you are surprised. Open mouth also indicates that you are surprised or you are feeling awe. Okay. Now, within the region of eye, it is the eyebrows and upper and lower lids as well as pupil. So I would write, it is the eyebrows the upper plus lower eyelid and the pupil. Pupil movement. It is the pupil movement which can convey the internal state of mind. So eyebrows, upper and lower eyelids and pupil movement can convey the internal state of mind. For example, wide eye effect. Wide eye effect reveals surprise, fright, and excitement. That is delight. It is called wide-eyed effect. Whereas beady eye effect, when you contract your eyes, there is some problem with my visit. Beady eye effect conveys pain. It conveys pain and anger. Beady eyes means when your eyebrows get wrinkled and your eyelids get squeezed. It is called beady eye effect. So it conveys pain or anger. Now regarding eyebrows, I have to tell you something. You know, something that can steal your identity or conceal your identity completely are the eyebrows. So if a person shaves out his or her eyebrows, he will be difficult to recognize, which shows the importance of eyebrows, that how important feature it is within the region of face. So the criminals who are out for lookout, who are on lookout, they generally remove their eyebrows or they change the pattern of their eyebrows. It entirely hides and conceals their original identity. So we saw that how facial expressions can reveal a lot about internal state of emotions, right? Another body language or kinesics is touching. touching. Different parts of the body can be touched in different ways. Different parts of the body can be touched in different manner to convey different emotions. Different parts of the body can be touched in different manner, in different ways to convey different emotions. Let us see how many ways people touch to convey their emotions. Beginning with kissing. A very common form of body language, kissing. Now, kissing mostly and most frequently occur between children and their parents. Kissing most frequently occurs between their children and the parents or between couples, and it indicates passionate behavior. And it indicates passionate behavior. That means kissing conveys friendliness. Kissing always conveys friendliness. Kissing behavior is also affected by cultural backgrounds. Kissing behavior is also affected by cultural backgrounds. For example, while greeting people in Middle East, kiss the hands. They don't believe in shake hand. People of Middle East, the Arabic world, they kiss the hands to greet someone. While in Western culture, people hug each other, kissing in air for greeting. People hug each other, kissing in air for greeting. So you must have seen the Europeans, when they meet with each other, they would gently hug each other and they will touch each other's cheek. They will touch the cheek with cheek and kiss in the air. Now, many Indians don't understand it. They think that they are kissing in the cheek. And it is very offensive. Suppose an European comes and hugs an Indian and he kisses in the air and the Indian kisses in the cheek. How embarrassing it will be. So, it always conveys friendly behavior. Sometimes the kissing is ritualistic. For example, in Christianity, kissing between bride and groom is an important ritual of marriage. Okay. It is an important ritual of marriage. Whatever form the kissing behavior takes place, it always conveys love. In whatever form kissing behavior takes place, it always conveys love. Okay. Also, in autocratic families, like monarchs and kings, when they meet with subordinates, they do not hug them. Instead, they expect their hands being kissed. They do not hug them. They expect that their hands should be kissed by the subjects. So suppose you meet with Queen of Britain. Queen of Britain will neither shake hand with you nor she would hug you to kiss in the air. Rather, she would just stretch her hand and you are supposed to hold the hands and kiss the hand. That is symbol of respect. Okay. So after kissing, I will go for more passionate form of touching, and that is hitting. Hitting. Kokna. Now, how many types of hitting? Let us see. While gentle hitting, while gentle hitting may convey warning, while gentle hitting may convey warning, but hard hitting, may convey aggression, that is dislike. So if you are gently hitting somebody, it is a warning. But if you are giving tight hitting, it's a sign of aggression, dislike. Then comes handshake. Then comes handshake. When you shake hand with others, it is also another form of touching. Handshake conveys greeting as well as farewell. Handshake conveys greeting as well as farewell. So it is done on two occasions. Either you greet the guest or you say bye to the guest. You shake hands. And the fourth type of touching is holding. Holding conveys companionship. Holding conveys companionship. However, if the grip of holding is too tight, it may also convey intimidation. If the grip of holding is too tight, it may also convey intimidation. So you are intimidating somebody. That is what it means if the grip is very tight. The third form of body language, where is the note gone? Is it the one? Yeah. Third form of body language is eye contact. The third form of body language is eye contact. Eye contact is defined as looking at the region of eye for a brief duration of time. Eye contact is defined as looking at the region of eye for a brief duration of time and it conveys pleasant emotion provided it is mutual. And it conveys pleasant emotions provided it is mutual. When only one person is looking, or making eye contact, it is known as looking. So you complain, look, he is looking at me. See, he is looking at me. So only one person, if it is not mutual, then it is called looking. If the duration of time of eye contact extends, if the duration of time of the eye contact extends, it becomes staring. If the duration of time of eye contact between two people extends, it is called staring. So when eye contact is mutual and for a brief duration of time, it conveys pleasant experience. Okay? It conveys pleasant experience. However, when eye contact is not mutual or extended, when eye contact is not mutual or extended, it conveys disliking. And ill feelings. According to Philip Zimbardo, according to Philip Zimbardo, according to Philip Zimbardo, avoiding eye contact, he found that when someone avoids making eye contact, it is indicative of unfriendly behavior. It is indicative of unfriendly behavior or shyness. So when someone is trying to avoid eye contact, it is indicative of unfriendly behavior or shyness. One is feeling shy. According to Strongman, when eye contact is mutual, according to Strongman, when eye contact is mutual, it is mostly indicative of intimacy. Okay? According to Strongman, when eye contact is mutual, it is mostly indicative of intimacy. The fourth type of kinesics is called posture. The fourth type of kinesics is known as posture. Irrespective of our awareness, our posture conveys a lot about our relationships. Okay? Our posture conveys a lot about our relationships. For example, leaning forward while sitting, or showing physical rigidity, or closing one's feet while sitting. While in sitting posture, closing one's feet, closing one's legs, not letting the legs spread out. While sitting, closing one's leg, leaning forward, or showing physical rigidity conveys subordination. That means you are trying to submit yourself to the authority. It conveys subordination. Whereas leaning backward conveys dominance and display of status. While leaning backward conveys dominance and display of status. Leaning backward conveys display of status and dominance. The fifth type of body language is head nod, nodding the head. Head nods are special type of gestures which help synchronizing the conversation. Head nods are special type of body language gestures which help synchronize the conversation. Head nodding provides important feedback to the speaker. Head nodding by the listener provides important feedback to the speaker. One or two nods indicates that the speaker must go on. One or two nods indicates that the speaker must go on. However, if the speed and frequency of head nodding increase, if the speed and frequency of the head nodding increase, it indicates that the listener wants to interrupt. Or the listener wants to speak. The sixth type of body language or kinesics is gesture. Gesture involves movement of arms, legs. Gesture involves movement of arms, legs, head, and torso. Movement of arms, legs, head, and torso. The most important category of gesture is known as emblem. The most important category of gesture is known as emblem. So what are emblems? Emblems are culturally specific gestures that include specific body movements. Emblems are culturally specific gestures that include specific body movements. So they are very culture specific. For example, when you do this to somebody, that means you are wishing him luck. This is an emblem. Americans, before the beginning of the race, the audience in America, before beginning of any kind of race, make this gesture. Okay. The politicians, when they win the elections or they are hoping to win the elections, they make V. V stands for victory. Okay. So these are specific emblems and mostly culture specific. Okay. Now there are some gestures which also reveal the state of mind of the person, which are not emblem as such. Say for example, can you tell me, if a student is scratching his head, while studying, what is this indicative of? So a student reading a book and scratching his head, what is indicative of? This gesture indicates what? confusion, difficulty to understand. Yes, correct. Okay? It is indicative of these things. Good. Now coming to paralanguage. Paralanguage. Paralanguage involves the volume, the pitch, intonations, volume, pitch, intonations, pauses, stressing on words, etc. Now, in this regard, Milmock conducted a study. Milmock found that in doctor-patient communication, in which the doctor was treating an alcoholic, the patient agreed for treatment when the doctor spoke in an anxious tone instead of angry tone. So while talking to the alcoholic, the doctor was speaking in anxious tone. So the alcoholic says, I feel extreme drive for alcohol. Ah, really? So when he does this anxious tone, the patient shows more cooperation rather than when the doctor shows angry tone. Lambert et al. Found that paralanguage conveys information about the geographical region as well as status of the individual. It conveys information about the geographical region where the person belongs to as well as status. So we have already noticed that people coming from different regions speak with a distinct accent. They talk with a distinct accent, and there is also difference in the rhyming of conversation. Okay, like if you listen to a Marathi, you will find they have a different tempo of talking. मला काय बोलतो, ठीक है, they will be singing. इस तरह से singing करेंगे. If you listen to Bhojpuri language, you will find a different tone and a different rhythm. ठीक है. If you listen to Punjabi, you will find a different rhythm. So, geographical region can be revealed from the accent of the person. And not only that, it can also convey some information about the status, the way they talk. Okay, for example, say if the status is low, if the person is coming from slum area or low socio-economic status, there will be a difference in their accent, there will be a difference in their rhythm, the way they talk. ठीक है, जैसे आपने टीवी सीरियल्स में देखा होगा, जो घर में काम वाली बाई होती है उसका नाम होता है गंगू बाई, वो कैसे बात करती है, तो उसका बातचीत से पता चल जाए कि ये सेठानी नहीं हो सकती, ये बाई हो सकती है. So this was found by Lambert et al. ठीक है. And then comes Dennis. Danitz et al. You can name it Danitz. Let me write his name first. Danitz et al. When the speaker speaks too fast, when the speaker speaks too fast, it is indicative of nervousness. When the speaker speaks too fast, it is indicative of nervousness. Okay? So this is non-verbal communication. And we have completed the topic of language and communication. And now I'm going to begin with the topic of development of human behavior. Okay. The topic of development of human behavior can be seen in terms of the following structure. The main theme in this topic is nature versus nurture. Nature versus nurture. And this nature versus nurture debate is also reflected in maturation versus learning debate. Maturation versus learning debate, about which you have already known in the language chapter when we discussed about nativist position and behaviorist position. So maturation versus learning or nature versus nurture is one theme from which you can expect one question. That is one thing from where you can expect one question. Then another theme in this topic is mastery of developmental task. Mastery of developmental task. So how do we master developmental task? How do we master cognitive development? How do we master physical development? How do we master moral development? You know, there are different aspects of development that we go through since our birth. So how do we master different challenges at different point of time in life? So mastery of a developmental task can also be asked in form of lifespan development. Many of the theories you have already known by now. Some of them which are not known, we will be discussing. Okay? Mastery of developmental task or lifespan development. It includes many types of development that take place. Social development, emotional development, moral development, cognitive development, physical development. So from this portion, we may expect one question. Okay? And finally, to what extent the society is responsible in affecting our development. So role of socialization in development. This can give you one separate question. So basically, 3 questions are possible from this topic. And as I have told you earlier also, that if they ask you to discuss the nature versus nurture, you don't essentially have to remember what you have learned in development of human behavior chapter. You can pick up any theory. You can pick up a debate between Chomsky and Skinner. You can pick up debate between intelligence, people who advocated that intelligence is genetic and people who advocated intelligence is hereditary. We saw so many studies. So whatever study appears in your memory at that point of time in exam, you are free to write. There is no hard and fast compartmentalization of study in this topic. Okay? So we shall begin it. Just give me a minute. Okay. Now see, before I move on to development of human behavior, I just needed to tell you one thing from communication. If from NVC, they ask a detailed question, they will ask you, what do you understand by non-verbal communication? Show the various forms of non-verbal communication. Then you will write all these things. You know, personal space language, that is proxemics, kinesics, paralanguage, etc. Sometimes they may ask you that what do you understand by object language, sign language, and action language? Okay. What do you understand by object language, sign language, and action language? This is also NVC. ठीक है, अगर डायरेक्टली ऐसा पूछ लिया है, मैं आपको बता ही देता हूँ, बाद में कंफ्यूजन न रहे. Suppose the question is, what do you understand by object, sign, and action language? Although they have not asked, but if they ask, object language is indicative of some kind of object. For example, when you go to a public laboratory, how do you recognize which one is the male toilet, which one is the female toilet? There is an object that makes you understand that it is a male toilet, it is a female toilet. For example, in female toilet, you will find एक छोटी वाली लड़की. ठीक है? If a choti wali ladki is seen on the door, it shows that it is a female toilet. If you find that there is no choti, there is a boy face, then it indicates it is a male toilet. Okay. So this is kind of object language. When the sign or the symbol NVC is indicating an object. Sign language is indicative of indication. It is an sign language indicates some kind of indication. It is symbolic in nature. For example, you might find the signs in the highway, right, left. Okay. You may find signs like stop. Okay. You may find signs like danger, etc. These are called sign language. They are indicating some kind of sign. Sign language can be also used by means of posture. Okay. Like raising the little finger is indicative of someone wants to go to the restroom. Action language indicates an action. It is asking you to do some action. Action language indicates an action. For example, this indicates an U-turn. You are asked to take a U-turn. So they can ask you question in this format also, that what is object language, sign language, action language. Although not asked so far, but they can ask. Now, starting with development of human behavior. Now, this topic begins with the nature versus nurture theme. And there had been several studies from the nature and nurture camp to explain their point of view when it comes to development of human behavior. Now, the genetic studies. The genetic studies which favor the importance of nature they have employed three types of studies: longitudinal, cross-sectional, मैंने आपको बताया था पहले इसके बारे में, and cohort study. So three types of studies have been employed when we try to identify or recognize the role of gene in development of behavior. Some studies are longitudinal. What is a longitudinal study? When the same group is studied more than one time on two different occasions. For example, if you want to trace the development of intelligence in children, you may measure the intelligence of children when they are 5-year-old, and then you can repeat the measurement when they are 10-year-old. So you will figure out if the intelligence is increasing or not. If it is increasing, then at what rate is it increasing, etc. So this is an example of longitudinal study. Then comes cross-sectional studies. Cross-sectional studies are employed to compare between two existing groups at the same point of time. Cross-sectional studies are employed to compare two existing groups at the same point of time. So there is no follow-up involved. Say if you want to see if there exists any difference in intellectual capability or intelligence between white and black children, then you can gather a group of white children of a particular age group or a grade, and you can gather similar grade or similar age group black children and administer similar testing on them to find out if there exists any difference. This kind of study is comparative study. It is called cross-sectional. Cross-sectional studies are conducted on the same occasion. And cohort studies are mixture of both. So two groups are compared on one occasion, and then they are compared on a second occasion. Two groups or more than two groups are compared in one occasion, and then they are once again compared on some other occasion, that is cohort study. Now, the first genetic study came from Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel identified the presence of allele. Gregor Mendel found the presence of allele in organisms. Today, allele is known as genes. So the original name of genes was allele, discovered by Gregor Mendel. And he found that everyone has two types of genes: dominant genes and recessive genes that they have inherited from their parents. Okay. So everybody has inherited two types of genes, dominant genes and recessive genes, from their parents. He found that dominant genes are manifested 3/4 of times. That means there are 3/4 chance that a dominant genes that is coming from either father or mother will be manifested in the traits of the child. So there is 3/4 chance that a dominant gene that is being transferred from the parents to the child gets manifested, while there is 1/4 chance that the recessive genes received from either father or mother gets manifested. Okay. So your dominant genes will determine majorly your genetic makeup. So most of the traits that will be found in the individual will be manifestation of dominant gene and less manifestation of recessive gene. Okay. The genes with which we are born is known as our genotype. The genetic makeup with which we are born is known our genotype. And our genotype interacts with the environment. Our genotype interacts with the environment to make us commit certain behaviors. So behaviors are product of interaction between genotype and environment. Behaviors are product of interaction between genotype and environment according to people who are protagonists of genetic influence. Okay? Now, listen to me carefully. What is a behavior? If you ask a behaviorist what is a behavior, they would say behavior is nothing but a reaction given to a stimulus from the environment. That means the purest definition of behavior is it is a reaction given to the environment stimulus. And there should not be any role of genes. If when we talk of behavior, we are talking about reaction given to environment, there should not be any role of genes. But when we are talking of a behavior in which it is not only a reaction given to the environment, but it is also partly influenced by genes. If we are talking about a behavior that is partly influenced by environment and partly influenced by genes, then technically speaking, it cannot be called behavior. Because behavior by definition is a reaction given to the environment without any impact of what? Genotype. Therefore, people who believe in genes to be crucial in determining our development name behavior or call behavior as phenotype. So behavior may be common for all people. For you, for me, the behavior may be common. Sorry, environment may be common for all people. Understand? You are living in Delhi, I am living in Delhi, all are living in Delhi. Suppose we are facing the same weather condition. Environment for all of us are common. But what makes behaviors different? What makes behavior different is genotype. So although two people placed in the same environment may show difference in behavior because difference of genotype, and hence such behaviors are known as phenotype. So put it simply, phenotype is nothing but it is the product of interaction between genes and environment. So instead of calling it behavior, they prefer calling it phenotype. Is this clear? Second study comes from study on selective breeding. Study conducted by R.C. Tryons. Study conducted by R.C. Tryon. Selective breeding. Tryon investigated the role of inheritance in maze learning of rats. Role of inheritance in the maze learning of rats. Tryons. So what did he do? He carried out a study on selective breeding. He took two groups of rats, maze bright and maze dull rats. So he identified some rats as maze bright and some as maze dull. Maze bride rats were those who took minimum number of trials to learn the maze. Maze dull rats were those who took great deal of time to learn the maze. Okay, so he identified the maze bride rats from the maze dull rats. He identified the maze bride rats from the maze dull rats. Subsequently, he bred selectively maze bride rats with maze bride rats. Subsequently, he bred maze bride rats with other maze bride rats, which is known as selective breeding. So he did not allow to mate the maze bride with maze dull. Okay. The children produced out of that breeding, the children who were produced out of the breeding, some were maze bright and maze dull. Children produced out of such breeding, some were maze bright and some maze dull. Some were maze bright and some maze dull. In the second generation. In the second generation. He selectively bred the maze bride with maze brides once again. He selectively bred the maze bride with maze bride once again. And the number of children born had, the number of children born had fewer maze dull rats. And the number of children born had fewer maze dull rats. He once again selectively bred the maze bride with maze dull. By fourth generation, all children produced were maze bright. By fourth generation, all children produced were maze bright. Okay. He did the same with maze dull rats. He did the same selective breeding with maze dull rats. He does the same selective breeding with maze dull rats so that all children born were maze dull. He did the same thing with maze dull rats so that all children born were maze dull. And hence he concluded due to selective breeding, over a couple of generations, due to selective breeding over a couple of generations, a specific type of genotype a specific type of genotype gets created. With selective breeding over a couple of generations, a specific type of genotype gets created. Now, the maize bright or maize dull rats, whenever they will breed out their children, it will be guaranteed that all children born will be maize bright when they are bred from maize bright rats and maize dull when they are coming from maize dull rats. And this is exactly what Francis Galton advocated in his theory of eugenics. As I had told you earlier, that Francis Galton believed that white people are superior, hence only white people should breed selectively so that the whole world becomes white in race. So they did it on New Zealanders, the Maoris. Okay. So they wanted to change the Maori population. So a white man would breed with a black woman. The number of children produced, 2 may be white, another 2 may be black. Now the 2 children will breed, the black one will not, until the entire population over 3-4 generation becomes white. This was their idea. लेकिन ऐसा तो हुआ नहीं, उल्टा ये लोग property के right holder हो गए. ठीक है? Now, family studies. Another type of study that has been employed to investigate the role of gene are the family studies. Family studies. The studies conducted over patients suffering mental disorder. The studies conducted over patients suffering from mental disorder reveal that defective genes runs through the family. The study conducted over the patients suffering from mental disorder revealed that the defective genes run through the family. There is 13% greater incidence of schizophrenia. 13%. There is 13% greater incidence of schizophrenia as compared to general population. There is 13% greater incidence of schizophrenia in family, within family, as compared to general population. So if one person has schizophrenia in the family, there is 13% risk that any other member in the same family may get schizophrenia. 13% more risk as compared to general population. Now let me tell you something. In earlier days, while going for arranged marriage, people used to do some investigation about the family history. And one of the key point of investigation was, परिवार में कोई mental disorder का तो मरीज नहीं था. You ask your parents or grandparents, they will tell you that the first and foremost thing that got them interested was to know if there has been case of a mental disorder in the family. In case they find that there is some case of mental history, then they will just stop, cancel the negotiation. This was one of the most crucial aspects in arranged marriage in earlier days. ठीक है, अभी तो treatment possible है, लेकिन उस समय treatment possible नहीं था. People used to take that precaution. ठीक है. Now, there is an argument that should have come from you. I was waiting. You can always say that people living in the same family are exposed to same environment. And suppose the environment itself is faulty, stressy. If the environment itself is stressy, then it will be stressy for all the members of the family. So it is very likely that if one member gets schizophrenia, the other being exposed to the same environment also gets. schizophrenia. So it may not be the presence of a defective gene, it may be presence of the defective family environment, which is affecting both of them. The argument हो सकता है. So this argument was forwarded. You can write. An argument was advanced over family studies. An argument was advanced over family studies that family members may be exposed to same stressful environment family members may be exposed to same stressful environment as they share the environment. As they share the environment. So instead of blaming the defective genes, the stressful environment should be blamed. Instead of blaming the defective gene, the stressful environment may be blamed. अब जेनेटिक कैंप वाले चुप बैठने वाले नहीं थे, उन्होंने कहा ठीक है बताते हैं. So what they did, they went for twin studies. They went for twin studies. Developmental psychologists have compared monozygotic twins with dizygotic twins. I believe you understand these terms. Monozygotic means twins who are born out of same zygote. They are also called identical twins. So because they are born out of same zygote, the genetic similarity is extremely high in monozygotic twins. Dizygotic are those who are born out of two different zygotes. They are also known as fraternal twins. They share lesser genetic similarity as compared to identical twins. Okay. So if monozygotic twins share 100% common genes, dizygotic twins share 50% common genes. Now there are two findings. When monozygotic twins are reared in the same family, when monozygotic twins are reared in the same family, they show greater similarity in traits as compared to dizygotic twins reared in the same family. So they show higher similarity in comparison to dizygotic twins who are reared in the same family, as well as monozygotic twins reared apart also show higher similarity of traits as compared to dizygotic twins, as well as monozygotic twins reared apart also shows higher similarity of traits as compared to dizygotic twins reared apart. So this indicates that with increasing genetic similarity, there is greater similarity in phenotype. With increasing genetic similarity, there is a higher similarity in the phenotypical behaviors or phenotypes. Now coming to genetic disorders. Genetic disorders very strongly establish the importance of genes in development of human being, like Down syndrome. Down syndrome. It is caused by presence of an extra 21st chromosome. It is caused by presence of an extra 21st chromosome, more likely to be found when children are born out of old couples. More likely to be found when children are born out of old couples. It is a genetic disorder. Nowadays, there is provision of testing inside the mother's womb for Down syndrome. In case Down syndrome is detected, there is an option for termination of pregnancy. Okay. Then comes phenylketonuria. In short, PKU. Phenylketonuria, PKU, is a metabolic disorder. You already know about it. It's a metabolic disorder in which the amino acids produced in the body, fail to be broken, which block the chemical messengers coming from brain, causing mental retardation. This is another example of genetic disorder. Third, Klinefelter syndrome. Klinefelter syndrome. It occurs due to presence of XXY chromosome. It is found in males. Which make them sterile and mentally retarded. Number D, Turner syndrome. It develops when females have only one X chromosome. Instead of having two X chromosomes, if the female have only one X chromosome, that is when the chromosome type is X0, it may lead to Turner syndrome. It leads to shorter body, shortening of fingers, shorter body, shortening of finger, and unusual shape of mouth. All the above genetic disorders are untreatable. All the above genetic disorders are untreatable, indicating a powerful influence of what? Genes. Indicating a powerful influence of genes. So this is vis-a-vis the genetic influence. Now we will try to investigate, does genetic influence has a bearing on maturation and therefore mastery of developmental tasks, or it is the environment and learning from the environment that determines how we master the developmental task. Developmental tasks like talking, developmental tasks like walking, developmental tasks like learning. These are all developmental tasks. So what is the role of gene, that is maturation, and what is the role of learning? So now the topic that I will deal with is maturation versus learning. Very important topic is the question answer. Okay. So this topic was first of all investigated by the classic case study done by Leonard Carmichael. In the year 1898. He lived between 1898 to 1973. Leonard Carmichael, very old and classic study. He carried out this study in the year 1926. So what is Carmichael's study? Just give me a minute. Leonard Carmichael. Now, he conducted an experiment in 1926. He took a mass of fertilized frog eggs, mass of fertilized frog eggs, मेंढक के अंडे, ठीक है. He took a mass of fertilized frog eggs and named them the experimental group. He allowed this group to develop in anesthetic solution. He allowed this mass of fertilized frog egg to develop in anesthetic solution. Anesthetic solution prevented movement and practice. So anesthetic solution prevented movement or practice. However, allowed the normal maturation to go on. Anesthetic solution prevented movement or practice, however, allowed the normal maturational process or changes to go on. Okay. So normal growth of different body parts will take place under anesthetic solution. The only thing is that the toad poles will not be able to move. Another group was designated control group. Another group was designated control group, and they were allowed to develop in ordinary water. इनको सादे पानी में डेवलप करने का मौका दिया गया. The way they develop in natural conditions. Now, as the control group of toad poles began to swim freely, started swimming freely, as the control group of toad poles began to swim freely, the experimental group were transferred from anesthetic solution to ordinary water. They were transferred from anesthetic solution to ordinary water. Remember, both the group of toad poles are of the same age, in the same stage of maturation. Maturation is proceeding at normal pace. And he found that the experimental group of toad poles started swimming freely, and he found that the experimental group of toad poles started swimming freely within 20 minutes. So within 20 minutes, those toad poles, which have never moved their body since their birth, started moving and swimming freely within 20 minutes. And this led Carmichael to conclude that locomotion is entirely dependent upon maturation, and there is no role of learning. Locomotion is entirely dependent upon maturation and there is no role of learning. Now, would you like to argue this experiment? Do you have some argument, reservation, objection over this experiment? I would like to see if you can make a guess. You can talk to me. Let me see if I can hear you. Yeah, Neha.
So I think if it's not dependent upon learning and it is maturation, immediately when they were put into water, they should have started swimming. Why did they take 20 minutes?
20 minutes is good enough time for practice. Valid objection. Now, this objection was raised. So, this experiment was questioned on account that 20 minutes would have been sufficient time for anesthetic tadpoles. 20 minutes would have been sufficient time for anesthetic tadpoles, that is experimental group, okay. 20 minutes would have been sufficient time for anesthetic tadpoles for learning to swim. Therefore, Carmichael transferred freely swimming tadpole from ordinary water. Therefore, Carmichael transferred freely swimming tadpoles from ordinary water to anesthetic solution. Therefore, Carmichael transferred the freely swimming tadpoles from ordinary water to anesthetic solution. Okay? In which they became immobile. In which they became immobile. Okay? Once they became immobile, he retransferred them to ordinary water. Once they became immobile, he retransferred them to ordinary water. Okay. And he found that it took exactly 20 minutes before the tadpoles start swimming freely. And he found that it takes exactly 20 minutes before the tadpoles start swimming freely. Okay? Therefore, he concluded that 20 minutes is the time consumed for wearing off the effect of anesthesia. 20 minutes is the time consumed for wearing off the effect of anesthesia. Wearing off the effect of anesthesia. आंधी आई हुई है बाहर दिल्ली में. Therefore, locomotion is dependent upon maturation according to Leonard Carmichael. This was done on frogs. Okay? Now, G.E. Coghill, second study comes from G.E. Coghill. If you remember, I have given you, in fact, some of you have posted that in the group also, WhatsApp group also, on the very beginning of the classes. Krevick and Chaplin, a book PDF file of Krevick and Chaplin was posted in the group towards the beginning. You will find all these studies in that book. Okay. G.E. Coghill studied the movement behavior of ambulostoma, kind of salamander. He conducted a study on movement behavior of ambulostoma. They are common salamanders, and found that all of them go through identical stages of development in movement behavior. And found that all of them go through identical stage of movement behavior. So it begins with non-motile stage. अभी देखो मुझे एम्बुलोस्टोमा बनाना पड़ता है. स्कूल में मैंने कभी नहीं बनाया. Coil stage. I'll explain you these stages. Flexion stage. And S stage. Now these salamanders, when they are young, and if they are stimulated in the region of head with a pin, if they are stimulated with a in their head region with a pin, in the first stage of development, they do not move at all, which is known as non-motile stage. After some degree of maturation, when you stimulate the region of head with a pin, it will move in making itself a coil-shaped body. It will move slightly, taking a coil shape, which is called coil stage. And after a few more days of maturation, it will show flexing, which is called flexion stage. And after more maturation, it will acquire a S shape when stimulated in the region of head. So all salamanders show a distinct, an identical sequence of development of movement behavior. Now, both of these studies have been carried over animals. Can we have studies over human in natural settings? It is very difficult to find human beings living in isolated natural settings so that we can understand the effect of genes on locomotion. However, Dennis and Dennis in the year 1940 studied the Hopi Indian children living in Arizona, US. Living in Arizona, US. Now, these days Hopis have got urbanized, but during that time they were still not urbanized, they were isolated. And during 1940, the Hopi mothers were still using cradle boards, to keep their babies. They were still using cradle boards to keep their babies. in which infants were bundled with tight wrapping. Infants were bundled with tight wrapping and placed inside the boards. The cradle boards prevented any kind of body movement. The cradle boards prevented any kind of body movement, and they were taken out only for cleaning. And the babies were taken out only for cleaning. So children who were packed inside the cradle boards, they had severe restrictions on their movement. They were only taken out once or twice a day for cleaning. Okay. The boards were discarded between the age group of 6 to 40. So they were kept inside the boards between the age group of 6 to 40. तो वो करते क्या थे? These tribal mothers, these hobby mothers would be working in the field. They would wrap their children tightly inside the cradle board and hang the board on the branch of the tree. So on the tree, several cradle boards will be hanging, carrying the baby, and the mothers will be working on the field. And by the evening, they will take the board, they will clean the baby, again put the baby inside the cradle board. This was a practice in Hopi Indian tribe. Okay, in 1940. And this continued till 6 to 14 months. 6 months से लेकर के 14 महीना तक, 1 साल 2 महीना तक, ठीक है? Dennis and Dennis found that white American children found white American children learned to walk by 15 months of age. White American children learn to walk by 15 months of age, and when Hopi children were liberated from cradle boards, they also started walking at 15 months of age. While Hopi children who were liberated from cradle boards also learned to walk by 15 months of age. Hence, Dennis and Dennis concluded that locomotion is completely dependent on maturation. Dennis and Dennis therefore concluded that locomotion is completely dependent on maturation. However, if movement is restricted over a long period of time, locomotion may get inhibited. If movement is restricted over a long period of time, locomotion may get inhibited permanently. Locomotion may get inhibited permanently. Therefore, maturation provides a critical period. Maturation provides a critical period during which humans and animals acquire the skills of locomotion. So maturation sets the stage for learning to take place. Maturation sets the stage for learning to take place. it may be concluded that culturally determined skills, it may be concluded that culturally determined skills like language are more influenced by learning and environment. Culturally determined skills like language are more affected by learning and experience, while physical development has greater contribution of maturation. While physical development has greater contribution of maturation. So this is the conclusion to our entire debate. Okay? देखो कितना काम आगे बढ़ गया. ठीक है. So I'll conclude the class here. Tomorrow we are resuming with development of human behavior, and I'll complete it tomorrow. And we are starting with environmental psychology tomorrow itself. Hi, Dekan, how are you? ठीक है. ज्यादा परेशानी हुई आपको शाम वाला क्लास करते हुए? नहीं ना? देखो कितना आसानी से हो जा रहा है. Why to waste one complete day for just ये छोटा-छोटा टॉपिक के लिए? ठीक है. Because I want to devote at least 6 lectures, morning, evening. सब मिला जुला के 6 लेक्चर मैं सिर्फ अदर एप्लीकेशंस को देना चाहता हूँ. अदर एप्लीकेशंस में जो आप पढ़ेंगे, जो आप सीखेंगे, it will not be available to many other people who are preparing for psychology. So I want to devote more time on it. They include terrorism, sports, military, influence of mass media on pro and anti-social behaviors. इन पे मैं ज्यादा समय देना चाहता हूँ. ठीक है? Yes, Neha.
I want to ask, what would be the conclusion of nature versus nurture debate? Is it more of nature or more of nurture?
Conclusion is that nature has bigger impact on physiology. Nurture has more impact on social and cultural skills.
Okay.
ठीक है. देखो ये हम लोग दिल बहलाने के लिए कहते हैं, because we are psychologists, we can't leave somebody disheartened or disappointed. Fact तो ये है कि जीन्स का 80% रोल है. ठीक है. लेकिन हाँ, when you talk about traits like personality, उसमें जीन्स का 80% रोल नहीं है, वहां पर ज्यादातर नर्चर का रोल है. ठीक है. Okay. So see you tomorrow morning. Good night.